Horror of Dracula. This version, while taking some of the characters and themes from the novel, is really its own entity. It's not based on the play, as far as I can tell, but changes things around just enough that I'd say it's inspired by the novel rather than based on it. It's very much a 60s movie, well, late 50s rather, with the bright colors, granted every movie before this one was black and white, and the bride's dress. I've now seen the first and last movie in this series, but I know it's basically the endless battle between Dracula and Van Helsing, which in retrospect reminds me a bit of the endless battle between Loomis and Michael Myers. Unlike the previous two movies, the castle is not shown to be a spooky place. On the contrary, it's brightly lit and picturesque. It's only in hints that we realize something is wrong. Dracula. This Drac is very clever, but also very reactionary. He seems mostly concerned with his own survival, but is content to stay in his castle until circumstances compel him to leave. He's also the only version of Dracula who seems to have any interest in the upkeep of his home. He's even hired someone to look after his library. He's got an eye for the ladies, but in at least this first entry to Hammer's Dracula series, he's monogamous. He has one bride. Harker kills her, and so the Count goes after Lucy in revenge. He then moves in on Mina once Lucy is dead, and actually seems to be primarily using her as a shield. Harker. This is the biggest departure for the character of Jonathan Harker. In the novel, he's a solicitor who goes to Castle Dracula to facilitate the Count's moving to England. It's the same in Nosferatu. In the Lugosi version, he's just Mina's fiancé. Here, he goes to Castle Dracula, but he goes with the full knowledge of who and what Dracula is. He goes there with the intent of killing the Count, under the guise of a librarian, and then he dies because the story demands that he be stupid. Van Helsing. The first time I ever saw Peter Cushing, he was playing a rather evil villain, which makes it a treat to see him as such a stalwart hero. Van Helsing doesn't seem to change much in the various versions of the story. He's a doctor who thinks outside the box, who believes in vampires. The difference here is that Van Helsing is a vampire hunter who has targeted Dracula, whereas in other movies he's merely a man who knows about vampires, and Dracula may be the first one he's ever actually encountered. Arthur. Somehow, I doubt that it's coincidence that later on this actor played Alfred, the faithful butler to Batman. Here, they've changed the relationship between many of the characters again. Now, he's Lucy's father rather than suitor, and Mina's husband. Harker was engaged to Lucy. One of a long line of stout fellows who, while initially resistant to the idea of something paranormal, then muster up their courage to face down the horror. Sadly for him, it's only after the death of his daughter that he comes to his senses. However, he's not nearly as annoying as previous skeptics in Dracula movies. This is probably a combination of better writing, acting, and changing standards of behavior. Mina. Arthur's wife this time around. She's rather more open-minded than her husband, who shuts out Van Helsing right away. She, on the other hand, goes to the doctor for help with what's happening to Lucy. Lucy. As seems to happen a lot, they do a bit of a switch here. In this movie, it's Lucy who Harker is engaged to and is Arthur's daughter, though she's still the opening Dracula victim. This movie keeps her as the sickly but pure-hearted character who is changed by Dracula's influence. They also added a niece for her to prey on once she's a vampire, possibly to up the stakes, but also possibly as a plot device to get the characters to the graveyard to take her out.